you know, the saga continues, scandal, whatever you want to call it, depending on your political perspective, over the IRS and the missing emails, the destroyed and missing hard drives. But even the Democrats, now I saw a survey of Democrats, and even 60+% of the Democrats do not believe the IRS's story. It's becoming the subject of jokes, even from congressmen. There's a Congressman, Steve Stockman, out of Texas, actually introduced a bill called the Dog Ate My Tax Receipts Act. And under the terms of that bill, individual taxpayers would be able to use the same type of excuse as the IRS when asked to produce their records to support their tax deductions or their credits or whatever it is. Apparently, he actually enumerated 10 excuses that the IRS would have to accept. The first one being the dog ate my tax receipts. But there are all sorts of excuses that the IRS would be required to accept, such as that you traded your documents for 5 terrorists, that you burned them for warmth, that they were water damaged in the trunk of Ted Kennedy's car, that they were left in a gun case that you sold to Mexican drug lords, you were short of toilet paper while on a camping trip. Stuff like that. These are the official excuses that the IRS would have to accept. Now, obviously, it would be great if this bill were to pass. Maybe it'll even pass the House of Representatives. Clearly, though, the Senate ain't going to go for it. But the point is, obviously, it's making fun of the IRS, where it's a double standard, where the taxpayers have to keep all their records for 7 years, and the IRS can't keep the emails from their director of the entire agency, the most important person there. And of course, I am the president of Euro Pacific Capital. I am required to maintain all of my emails, and I do, and I have to produce them on demand, which we do. And if we don't have them, we get fined. So the government holds the private sector accountable. We can't come up with an excuse. The FINRA, the SEC, they're not going to accept the excuse that, we lost it, or, our hard drive crashed, and so we don't have what you want. They're not going to accept those excuses. So if the government won't accept those excuses from us, why do we have to accept those excuses from them, right? The government is beholden to the people, not the other way around. We cannot be held to a separate standard. The law applies to the lawmakers as well as American citizens. But this is not just Congress that's making fun of this. Even the late night talk show hosts are having fun with what is obviously a cover up, what is obviously lies. It just doesn't pass the smell test, right? Here's an example. This is from The Daily Show. Jon Stewart talking about this issue. The first cut is cut number 14.
The federal government has built an entire complex in the deserts of Utah to store everything Americans have ever said to each other. But intergovernment conversations? I don't know, buy a thumb drive. If there is a larger scandal here, it's that our government's handling of information across all platforms borders on criminal idiocy.
That's a point that Stewart is making. I don't know if I even made that point myself. He did it as part of a comedy show. But the point is, if the government is investing all this money, spending all this money to spy on us, to record all of our emails, to record all of our conversations, why can't they even record their own? Right? That's what they should be doing. They should be keeping a record of all the intergovernment conversations, not the conversations that take place between private citizens. There, it's none of the government's business. It's not the government's business, the emails that I send to people or the conversations that I have, because we have privacy. But what is the government's business is to keep track of their own emails and their own conversations to make sure that the rights of the people are being protected, that government bureaucrats aren't breaking the law. And here's a situation where we want proof. We want to know if there were specific orders, if there was a deliberate plan on the part of certain people in the administration or the IRS to specifically target conservatives for scrutiny, for audit, to harass them. Clearly, that would be a crime, and a way to prove it would be to have the records. But we don't have the records because the government didn't keep them, because they were spending so much money trying to spy on individuals and keeping the records of law-abiding citizens that they forgot to keep the records of their own people, which, really are the type of records we need specifically for a situation like this. Here's the final clip of Jon Stewart, cut 15.
The IRS is frying hard drives, the VA's drowning in paper. Is there any record-keeping medium that the government could use that could work for them? Microfiche will do it. Stone tablets will do it. We could take a page out of the ancient Greeks, weave all of our important information into an epic poem, and recite entirely from memory, passed down over generations as part of a federal archival oral tradition from bard to apprentice. But you'd probably lose that page.
Yeah, I mean, look, the whole thing is ridiculous with all the technology that we have. The IRS even had, a company that they hired to make sure that none of their data was lost, which they conveniently fired right before they lost the data, just to cover their tracks and make sure there were no copies